Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. It is Pastured Pig Podcast time. As always, I'm your host, Troy, excited to have another episode ready for you all to enjoy. And as I sit here in my office and look out the window, as I'm recording this, we just passed the summer solstice. So we're on the downhill side. Those of you all excited for snow and ice? I can't even say that with a straight face. You're halfway there. You've reached the summit. Those of you that hate summer, and I don't know too many pig farmers that hate summer. But as I look out the office window here onto the expanse that is Red Tool House, I really can only look about 20 feet because everything's so green and bushy right now. It seems like around here, as we get closer to the solstice, it's like things just go into jungle mode overnight. I swear, I think the trees outside of my office that keep me from looking down onto the what we call the easternmost pig pasture, I just can't see. I can't see it all. It's just a wall of green right now, and it seems like just over the past 2 weeks it just poof exploded, leaves everywhere. And the other thing that happens right now that is terribly frustrating for me is white-tailed deer infestation. Some of you all have cicadas. Some of you all have love bugs if you're down in Florida. Some of you all have stink bugs or ladybugs or all those type of infestations. We have white-tailed deer infestations at this point. In fact, we are so overrun with whitetail, I have put up as much electric as I possibly can around anything we're trying to protect to keep the whitetail from eating it, and they're still eating it. So my recent attempt was to clear out or to keep deer from clearing out my potato patch. So I put a fence charger just for that, and it's probably a 20 by 30 field of potatoes. It's tough to even call that a field, a patch of potatoes. And I had one extra energizer and hooked that thing up. I'm getting 16 kilovolts off that thing. So I'm actually hoping I can see a whitetail actually just burst into flames at some point. But then we just discovered this week that my fencing that we had around our garden, our backyard garden, the deer have decided they're going to come over that, and they hit us pretty hard. So we got to figure out how to take care of that and keep them out. So landscaping, flowers, food, whatever. I'm just glad the whitetail don't eat meat, or they'd jump me when I go out to the garage or when I'd walk out to the shed at some point. So that's the struggle we're having. I keep saying this fall I'm going to declare whitetail nuisance animals and fill up a couple freezers, but you know how that goes. But anyway, I hope everyone is, since we're at the halfway point, the marker of the solstice, I'm hoping that everyone is halfway through all their goals they want to get accomplished in the warm season of 2021. I'm sure all of us are cheering, saying, yes, we are far past halfway, Troy. We are so productive this year that things are going great. So I hope that's the case, because it's definitely not the case here at Red Tool House. All right, well, before we get into our interview, I do want to give a shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Again, I really appreciate you all that have decided to help us out, to help keep the podcast going, and of course to offer additional elements, additional incentives as we move along. So we are creeping up to that first goal of 20 people. So once we get there, then of course we'll get to switch some additional stuff on, but we're also already doing additional episodes, and there'll be some additional what I call DLC information out there, some spreadsheets and things that we use. Going to be adding that soon. Hopefully people can find that of use when it comes to managing pigs here on the farm. But I want to give a shout out real quick on the list to our supporters. I want to give a special thanks to Jed Bicker and Dana Probert, Noah West, Bill Speed, Dan Pro, Adam Gardner, Obar Farms, J.B. Brown, Chet Peters, Mario Tessier, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Bonnie Hewitt, Clayton, here we go. Oh my goodness, Clayton, I am so sorry. Schnauer, Schannauer, Schnauer. Clayton C. Thanks, Clayton. Fritz Seabolt and Chris White. Chris actually just joined us about 20 minutes ago. So his name popped up just as I was starting to record this. So Chris, thank you so much for your support, and everyone else. I appreciate that. And hopefully your support won't be in vain. We'll keep moving with additional episodes and some additional features as we go along. If you'd like to be part of that team, obviously just down in our show notes there, you can see the link. Click on that and get to see the details, the different levels we have, details of what goes along with that. And we'll keep clicking along. Along those same lines, I'm hoping, I know that I cringe a little bit with some of these interviews because the audio quality is at times what I consider subpar. And that really is a limitation of my home office and a landline. Yes, I do have a landline that I use, and that's how we're doing interviews right now because I don't have any other options. My internet's too slow, too much latency to do anything, Zoom or Skype or anything like that. I don't have cell service here, so I can't do cell phone calls. And I swear, I think the phone lines that were put up were probably leftovers from Thomas Edison's initial install of electric wires, because they are dodgy at best. So what's really funny is if we get any rain, then the phone quality decreases because I think the sheathing on the lines are like Swiss cheese. They're so old. But that's the price you pay to live in paradise, right? So as I've mentioned before, as soon as Elon Musk comes to save our lives here with Starlink, we know it's coming soon. We've put our deposit down on our equipment. So hopefully as that comes available, that is supposed to be a game changer for us. We'll see. I'm not completely sold, but hey, it's better than what we've got now. Okay, so let's move along. Today we are discussing Broad Arrow Farm in Bristol, Maine with my new friend, Dan Sullivan, and really enjoy this conversation. I know I say that every time. I guess one of these days I need to say, this conversation really sucked. This was just a drag that I had talking to this person. But I haven't run into that yet. I've yet to have a bad conversation. And knock on wood, I hope I never have a bad conversation. But everyone that's come on has been obviously very fun to talk with. It's neat to see their specific experiences. But I like what Dan's going on here. I even had in my notes to make sure to point out that we had a great conversation about Dan's value-added services. And if you don't know exactly what that means, I won't get into that in too much detail now. We'll let Dan speak for himself. But it's this idea of what do you add to your farm experience to move your product more, to give more uniqueness to your product, to add a service. Basically just you're adding value to what your base product is simply through an experience, simply through any type of upgrades. That's value added, and really like what he has. And I love the sense of humor they have there, obviously being up in Maine. They've got this thing called the Suppa Club, which I thought was clever, obviously taking advantage of that local vernacular up there in that neck of the woods. But Dan goes on to explain some of the things he has there, and it was a really good conversation. In fact, we may get Dan back on. I've got an earmark by him getting back on here to talk about Mangalitsa, how they actually the genetics associated with that, and then of course how to market that, how they've been successful in marketing Mangalitsa as far as product goes. Because I know there's some of us that would be like, wait a minute, you can only go so far with that breed, kind of like what people say with Kuni. But I've got him on the list. Maybe getting back on, we'll have that conversation. But enough of me rambling on. So let's get on to our conversation with Dan, and I'll catch you guys on the tail end of the interview. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. Excited this morning. Yes, I'm doing a morning interview, so that's why I sound a little different. But excited this morning to have with me on the podcast Dan Sullivan from Broad Arrow Farm in Bristol, Maine. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Troy. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and talk with us. I know you got a lot of stuff going on up there in Bristol, and to take some time out of your day to talk with us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, well, let's start out. Let's talk a little bit about, if people are listening, I'm going to try to keep from fawning over Maine because I talk about it a lot on the podcast. But let's talk a little bit about Broad Arrow Farm in Bristol, Maine, where it's located, and some of the unique aspects of your farm there.
Sure. Bristol, Maine is in a region of the state known as Mid-Coast Maine, so between Portland and Rockland, Maine. It is our farm's located on a peninsula called the Pemaquid Peninsula. So what we call downtown is a town called Damariscotta, which is on Route 1. We are between Damariscotta and the sea. And the peninsula is unique in many ways. One is that it, on one side of the peninsula is the world's greatest oyster fishery, the Damariscotta River. Mm. And on the other side, which is the Atlantic side, Muscogee Bay is the world's greatest lobster fishery. So, it makes our geography, our location, unique for those reasons, but also it gives the whole area sort of a culinary bent. And when my wife and I were looking for a spot to start a farm, we thought that was as good as any, if for no other reason than, as I said, there are a lot of producers operating in the area, not so much land-based, but sea-based producers, and we thought that would make for an interesting combination if we could add the land-based protein side of things to it.
Yeah, I'd love that approach. I mean, that is really looking at your market and understanding the uniqueness of that area. And I think, and we'll get into that here in a bit, I think you've really taken that and run with it with some of the value-added services you offer on your farm, really looking at the culinary side of that. Well, let's talk real quickly. So Broad Arrow Farm, established 2014, I think, correct?
Right.
So that was was that your first foray into farming? Have you experience elsewhere? Did you grow up doing this all your life? Is dirt in your blood type of thing?
No, yeah, no, we didn't. Neither my wife nor I have any background in farming. The impetus came from my studies. I was studying for a graduate degree, and I won't bore you with the details of that, but I was reading an author who really changed my mind, or really educated me, frankly, about the current state of affairs in American agriculture. The author's name is Wendell Berry.
Oh yeah.
Most absolutely. People who listen to your podcast know him.
Sure.
I think he's one of America's great treasures and underappreciated, although the people who discover him, just think he's absolutely amazing. And he is real countercultural thinker, and he really caused me to rethink how many things I thought I knew, especially about economics. I used to be in finance, so I thought I knew everything about economics, and I understand a lot better after reading Wendell Berry, The Consequences of Our Economic System. So I mentioned to my wife, we owned property in Maine at the time, but it was just a vacation home. And I said, we ought to sell our vacation home and find a property and start farming, homesteading on a homestead scale. And this is after reading Wendell Berry, and she said to me, that's crazy talk. What do you? We don't know anything about farming. What do you? That's nuts. And it took me about 5 years of dropping hints and sprinkling our conversations with the glories of the agricultural life, the homestead life, and finally I wore her down, and she agreed. And we knew the area where our farm is located now. We knew the area pretty well. It has the advantage of being both, just from a pure farm economics perspective, being close to markets, not too far from Portland, and it's a nice balanced community, many communities in Maine, especially coastal Maine, tend to be very, very seasonal, and ours, Bristol, has a seasonality to it as well, but it also has a year-round functioning culture, in the broadest sense of that term. So, we knew it was an attractive place to live and where we could raise our family, and so we chose. We really dedicated our search to that area, and as you might imagine, there aren't many, or weren't many at the time, and still aren't many functioning farms. So we ended up buying a property that hadn't been farmed in probably 3 generations, maybe more, and we just figured that we would, just homestead, and we didn't really have a sort of commercial scale farm in mind at the time. And the property we chose was 130 acres, mostly wooded, 10 acres open. I wouldn't call it tillable. That's probably an overstatement, but you could certainly garden, and there's an open pasture. And because we had an abundance of woods and not so much open ground, we just started with pigs. Pigs do well in the woods, and we thought, if we screw this up and they're in the woods, they're not going to do much damage, so no big deal. And so we bought 5 feeder piglets, and we raised them, and it was fun. It was fun to raise them. I had no previous experience with livestock whatsoever. It was easy. We fed them out of 50-pound bags. Nothing special. A mix from Green Mountain, a big Vermont mill, and an organic mix. And we harvested the pigs, or had them harvested by a local abattoir after probably 7-8 months. And we took our first bite and could not believe what we tasted. I mean, we were stunned. And we're coming from a background where we thought we were conscientious eaters, where we were paying the extra money to buy organic. We were buying what we thought was the best meat and fish and whatever other poultry, whatever other animal protein from really good stores. We were paying the extra money for that. And we thought it was important to us to be eating healthy. And then we tasted that pork, and we just could not believe what we tasted. And I go back to what I said before, Troy, is that we didn't think we had done anything special. We hadn't used a special feed, a proprietary feed or anything. And I've now come to understand 5-6 years later that the special part was raising them on the ground, raising the animals on the ground.
Right.
And that makes all the difference, starting with the fact that the animal itself is never stressed. And, to steal a line from Joel Salatin, the animals are able to exhibit their natural, the pigness of the pig. They're able to engage in their natural behaviors, social and foraging behaviors. And I think that makes all the difference. Now, since then, we've become more educated about feed and everything, so we've got some ideas that we think have improved our carcass quality. But, that first little herd that we raised, tiny herd that we raised, was really an eye-opener. And we thought, geez, we didn't do anything special, and this is the result. Well, we're onto something here. I bet you everybody who tastes this pork would say, where can I get more of that? And that's really what drove us to start building to a commercial scale.
Yeah, that's man, what a great story. And that transition, wow, there's 60,000 tentacles to that, what you just laid out there, but that transition to go from a homesteading, kind of raising your own, to that epiphanous moment where, like, man, this is incredible, and where we're located, we could really turn this into something great. So what was that conversation like with your wife, as far as I assume at that point prior to you both had day jobs or something there that was paying the bills. So at what point did you say, okay, this is where we're going to refocus our livelihood to go in this direction? And how did that evolve?
It was pretty gradual. And my wife's day job is as an attorney, and she maintains her day job to this day. I mean, she's an attorney, and that's what she spends most of her time, the vast majority of her time doing. And my day job is stay-at-home father. So my day job is more compatible to growing the farm than hers. And actually, it has worked well because we have off-farm income, and we needed that. We have needed that off-farm income in order to build the farm, because we literally were building it from scratch. I mean, we had the land base that was appropriate, but we had no fencing, we had no shelter, we had no storage, we had no farm machinery of any kind. The access to our site was terrible. It still is terrible. Not a situation where we could ever have the public come to this first site. So we now farm on 2 sites, and I can explain that in greater detail. So the conversation, to be perfectly frank, I didn't even have to have it, because she enjoyed so much our experience raising these pigs, and so did our children. They were in their elementary school age at the time. Now they're all teenagers, and they also enjoyed raising the pigs. And I think that's another thing about this class of livestock. They're knowing animals. They have personalities. They have knowing eyes. That's how I describe them. They have knowing eyes. And so that means that there's an engagement with the animals that is satisfying, and you don't get that with, I have found you don't get that with every class of livestock. But so we enjoyed it, she enjoyed it, and we just began building gradually. It took us a couple of years to even acquire breed stock, and we finally did that. And then I would say we didn't crack the Homestead scale until probably 2017. 2017 was when we pushed. We had our own breed stock, and we probably harvested in 2017 maybe 100 pigs, something like that. So that's when we sort of pushed it, beyond the Homestead scale.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I want to underscore something you said there. I think it's important. I know there's a majority of our audience that is scaling up. So they may be at the commercial level just now, or they're even maybe at the homestead level and looking at turning this into income. And I want to underscore what you said there, the gradual transition. And I think that's so important to recognize. We get excited. We want to pull the trigger now. We're kind of a culture of instant gratification, and money right now is pretty cheap. So there's a temptation to go out and acquire all this debt to get this equipment and to have all this expensive stuff to get to the level you think you need to be. But with the gradual rollout, A, you can possibly avoid most of that debt, if not all of it, and B, you get to see how your animal reacts to the land, how you react to the animal. All these variables get to be played out before you have this huge investment, before you paint yourself in a specific corner. So I think that's really important, and I love the way you rolled that out there. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things about pigs that we've found is that for whether it's homesteaders who want to raise a small herd for extra income, which I think is totally doable without a big investment, or even farms, whether it's dairy farms or certainly veg farm, any farm that wants to do or is interested in doing like a bolt-on enterprise. Pigs are a good bolt-on enterprise because I think they're relatively easy to manage if you have the right spot for them, and if you're only doing it seasonally. That's another big challenge that Maine has, is the winters are harsh, and if you're going to keep breed stock, you have to overwinter them. If you're gonna sell your, depending on your distribution, like we have multi-channel distribution, and so we have to farrow. We have to harvest pigs every month of the year. So that's a really big challenge, really big infrastructure challenge. But you don't have to do that. You can run a nice little herd seasonally, buy in feeders in the spring, and harvest them in the fall, and sell to your friends and neighbors, or sell to a farm like us. We wouldn't need you to feed them, but you could also keep breed stock and sell piglets. I mean, that's a big market right now. The feeder piglets are really, it's incredible how many. We don't do it, but it's incredible how many calls I get. Looking for feeder piglets.
We're the same way. I could have sold probably 10 litters last year if I had them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this value added. There's looking on your website, and I'll post all this information down in the show notes so you guys can find links to Dan's stuff here. But there's a lot of value added services. So it sounds like from 2014 to 17, you're gradually rolling out. At 17, you say that's kind of your kick to the commercial. So now, looking at all the value added services, how did you get to that point? Do you say, well, we're going to offer this, we're going to do on-farm butchery, we're going to offer the online sales, we're going to offer the daily, the weekly meal situation. So let's look at that from a global perspective first, and then we'll get down and unpack each one of those.
Okay, sure. I mentioned that the first site where we started our homesteading was not really practically accessible to the public. So it just so happened, serendipitously, that another property about a mile from the one where we started, which has good public access, came on the market for a very reasonable price. It even has a little infrastructure. It had a home on it that was in good shape, but it also had a barn, an old barn that was in good shape. And so we were able to acquire that property for a reasonable price, and that gave us access to the public, which is important because at first we thought, we'll do a CSA type thing, and we'll do farmers markets and that kind of thing. And we found that the time invested in the CSA model, and we have some buddies who are kind of our mentors in Maine, farmers in Maine, and they have really a cattle ranch, but they did pigs as well, little bolt-on sort of enterprise pigs, and learning from them, we saw that the CSA thing has some challenges, and scale being one of them, and then the farmers markets are difficult because you're selling frozen product, shoulder to shoulder with other farms. They're selling the exact same thing, oftentimes having processed their pigs. I mean, it's the same abattoir that you had yours.
Right.
Process that. And so that didn't strike us as a winning formula either. And we decided that setting up our own on-farm market was the best way to, and try to capture the retail dollar was the best way to go. Now, in addition to that, one of our first hires, employee hires, was a gentleman, Oman Veely, who is a butcher and a chef in Portland, Maine, or what had been for many years. And we hired him really to be our sausage maker. We really wanted to get into charcuterie and start making our own sausage. But because he had these relationships with many restaurants and butcher shops in the coastal Maine area, Portland area, he was able to start walking in with our pork and selling it to restaurants. So our business direct to restaurants. So our business developed commercially, first and foremost, on a sort of wholesale to restaurant business, and much of that was whole animal. So we were able to sell half carcasses and whole carcasses to restaurants and butcher shops. So in 2017, 2018, that was probably, 2/3, even 3/4 of our income was derived from those wholesale sales to restaurants and butcher shops.
Excellent. Wow. So starting with the on-farm market there, and with the gentleman there that had that chef experience, what was the evolution of those other value-added services you offer? So was that when you then moved into these into these subscription boxes, and of course developing your website?
Yeah. The first thing we did was we were sort of selling what I would call selling from almost directly from our processor to our customers, our wholesale customers, and then doing a little retail out of our farm market as that developed. And that was sort of slow to develop. We had a good first summer, but it was it paled in comparison to because we just weren't known, and it paled in comparison to what we were doing in the restaurant market. And so we decided we were building up and investing in our on-farm market, buying refrigeration and buying displays and trying to get set up. But that's a slow, that took some time. We had two growing seasons, 2 summers. We were open seasonally at the time where, we were selling out of the market, but it was kind of a seasonal thing, and we weren't real well known, and so that took some time. And in the meantime, our wholesale business sort of carried us, and we had invested at the end of or during 2019. We thought, well, we need to kit out a kitchen so that our chef butcher Omen can make really sausage. I mean, that's really what we were, sausage and other butcher food, pâtés, terrines, porchetta, other butcher food that we could sell in our market. And we invested in that. It was a very small kitchen. It took some doing, but it was a significant commitment. But we did it anyway because we felt like that we needed to capture the value-added dollar and not just sell raw pork, which I think is difficult. I think it's difficult to just sell raw pork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the distribution channel is. It's competitive, and it's difficult to differentiate yourself. So we invested in that kitchen. That was at the end of 2019. And then, everybody knows what happened in March of 2020. But at the end of 2019, or one thing that happens in our area that is different from other places is that many of our restaurants close in the what we call the off season, close in the winter, and that shrinks the restaurant base locally in our little community, the Bristol community, down to 3 or 4 places, and they're great, and we go and eat there all the time, and they're convivial. We love that, but it becomes kind of monotonous after a while. So we decided, with our having made this commitment to this kitchen, that we want this kitchen to be, we want a return on our investment. So we want that kitchen to be rolling every single day.
Sure.
And so we started this meal club, this supper club. We call it Suppa.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
We essentially gave people who signed up for the membership, which is just a $10 one-time fee, so really nothing. We send our members a menu every week on Friday mornings, and then they have until Monday evening to choose from that menu. It's a la carte menu, so there are choices of entrees, choices of starters and side dishes. And then they place their orders by Monday night, and they come to the market and pick up on Thursday and Friday. And we started that in January, so it's like dead winter, and January of 2020. And at that time, it was popular because people thought exactly what we expected. Hey, it's an alternative. This is an alternative to having to go to the 2 or 3 restaurants locally, and we don't have to cook, so that's great. We can take home, heat, and eat. And it's real food because it's coming from Broad Arrow Farm and other farms, close, proximate to our farm in Maine. We're all organic, and so it's real food, and it's prepared by a chef. This is no joke. So the value proposition was great. You didn't have to pay to be eating in somebody else's room, and so you didn't have that markup. And so the value proposition was great, and it was really easy, and so it gave people an alternative. And that was popular. Started in January, February, very popular. And then mid-March, COVID hit, and there was the lockdown to flatten the curve, and all of our restaurant customers closed, and the restaurant business went away literally overnight.
Yeah.
But two things happened. One is all the restaurants were closed, but our meal club was open for business,
Yeah.
and so our membership, doubled overnight.
Oh, I bet.
And we went from maybe having 20 members, doing 15, 20 meals a week to doing 50. And at one point we did 70 double portion meals, so that's 140 covers in 1 week. So
yeah, that's a bit of a scale. That's a bit of a scale up pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. And we were humping hard really to keep up. And so there was that side of things, and then the other side was our market. At that time of the season, our market was closed. We were only open a couple days a week, and it was really just to distribute the supper club. And if you remember, in mid-March, grocery stores, if they had, there was a supply disruption, right? So if they had anything, forget about toilet paper, anything I'm talking about. If they had anything, you had to wait in line to go get it, and you didn't want to wait in line because there were a lot of other people gathering, and the grocery stores were a disaster. Nobody wanted to go shopping, but they could come to our market and get food. So and not just food, but real food.
Yeah.
And so we decided, again, overnight, instead of being open 2 or 3 days a week, as we were at the time in March, we said, okay, we're open 6 days a week. Let's go. And at that point in time, we had a team of six people. So 3 production people and then actually 5 at the time. So 3 production people and 2 people, one managing the store and one managing the kitchen. And we just started working around the clock mid-March to serve our customers, and that, of course, even with our market, many people didn't want to come inside to shop. So we had a website at the time, but we needed to, again, like overnight, load into our online store every item that we sell in our market, so that our customers could browse our online store as if they were coming into our market.
Yeah.
And then they could arrange for curbside, no contact curbside pickup. And so we did that. In a week, we went from having, sausage, bacon, and pork chops on our website to everything we sell in our market.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And because most of our vendors are Maine vendors, we had no supply disruption at all. So we were fully stocked at all times. We have good relationships with our local processors, so we didn't have any problem keeping pork rolling and other animal proteins. So we were able to adapt really quickly, and we caught a lot of market share because of COVID. We caught a lot of market share that might have taken us a couple of years to capture had it not been for COVID.
Yeah. What an interesting. It's great to be able to evolve and to adapt that quickly, and that's the beauty of having the right business model where you can be that flexible and fluid when the time comes. And again, who in the world anticipated a global pandemic affecting us last year?
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
being able to just capitalize on a certain circumstance, and it sounds like there's a bit of fortune involved there as well, being set up just in time to jump on that.
Right. I would say that that's a good point. So to go back into what our design was, what we planned intentionally with respect to the market and the kitchen was we invested a lot in that vertical integration because we thought that we found that the best way for us to capture more market share, to bring more customers, attract more customers, was to actually get our food into their mouth. So selling raw meat was difficult, and especially in our setup in our little farm market at the time, we were selling it frozen, exclusively frozen.
Yeah.
So it took a kind of a leap of faith, and of course, when people tried our product, they had the exact same experience that we did, which is, wow, I can't even believe this is pork. I've never had pork like this. And so we won customers that way, but it was slow and word of mouth, and marketing, advertising and marketing can be expensive. And since we're a novice, we're not professionals like you. Since we're novices, we weren't sure if those dollars invested were realizing a return. So we knew, though, that if we could get prepared food, cooked food into people's mouths, they would just keep coming and coming and coming. And so we wanted to reduce that that barrier to trying our product. And this is the other thing when you're in the pastured market, and we're not certified organic, but we use organic feed and organic methods, and so we're all but organic. It's expensive. It's hard to do things that way. It's expensive for us, the producer, and so our products are priced accordingly. And that can be an impediment too.
Sure.
Somebody comes and they look at a pork chop and we're selling it for whatever, $11 a pound, and they say, well, geez, I can go to the grocery store and buy the same pork chop for $1.99. Why would I pay $11 for a pork chop? And that's another impediment. It takes time to convince people, and even if you want to go to the trouble, educate them about externalized costs and stuff like that.
Right.
So that vertical integration, being able to distribute directly from retail direct from our farm, because that's really important. Knowing this is one of our taglines. Know where your meat comes from, and then being able to actually make food. So it also helps us with inventory control. So if we've got something in our market that hasn't been moving, or including produce, by the way, we can then take that food or that animal protein, whatever it is, we can take it into our kitchen and make a meal out of it, make a soup or make a stew, or we can make, if it's depending on what kind of animal protein it is or what cut it is, we can make it into sausage. And so the kitchen gives us a lot of flexibility controlling inventory as well.
I love that, and that's something that I think the majority of us don't even think about, and it really didn't register with me till you said that. That's fantastic to be able to take. There's certain cuts, of course, that you just can't move as fast as you can others, and to look at that and say, okay, just by doing some value-added services, by incorporating some other elements into this, then you are producing a new product, something somebody wants to try out, but you're able to burn up inventory that may get tossed out at some point simply because it has a limited shelf life. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's it has required significant investment to become vertically integrated. And we have as I said, we have a team. We have 6 full-time employees. So we need to be at a certain scale in order to support that.
Right.
And it's a real management challenge. It's no joke. Now, I don't mean to say that a farm that concentrates exclusively on raising livestock is any less of a management challenge, because that's a management challenge in and of itself. But the vertical integration, it's expensive and it can be challenging. That having been said, we think it gives us the best chance to succeed long term and to make sure that and to differentiate ourselves. I mean that was also the point. It's one thing to capture as much margin as you possibly can. That makes sense. And so selling charcuterie for $45 a pound rather than selling a pork chop for $9 a pound or $10 a pound, that makes sense to us. But more importantly, what we're trying to do is be different from the other farms out there who are raising pork exclusively and selling it raw exclusively. So, I can't. I do say this, that our pork is better than everyone else's pork, and I honestly believe that.
Sure.
I'll do a taste test anytime with anybody. But when you're selling to a restaurant or selling to a butcher shop, and you're selling that raw meat, I can't say that the farm down the road has an inferior product. It's not like I'm comparing it against the industrial raised pork, because I don't. That's a totally different. That has nothing to do with what we do. I don't even consider that real food. It's not real food, and we can get into that. I'd love to have a discussion about industrial raised food and how it's not real food and making Americans sick. But we can talk about that later, or not at all, because that could be a whole podcast unto itself.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But we do want to be able to distinguish ourselves from, differentiate ourselves from other farms, and so part of that's branding and everything. But being able to sell food direct out of a retail market, and then also actually make food, whether it's your typical butcher type products, as I mentioned before, like sausage and pâtés and terrines and that kind of thing, or going all the way up to actually preparing meals and selling meals.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Dan, I know I'd be remiss if I didn't address this in all of the vertical market details you're discussing here. So let's talk briefly about the life cycle process of the animal. So it sounds to me like the pigs and some of your other, because I know you're polyculture, but the animals, they go off farm for actual slaughter, but then come back. Do you bring them back quartered or halved, and then you then do your butchery process then? And then also for that same process, what were some of the regulations and permitting and inspection hoops you had to jump through for all that?
Sure. So we are a farrow to finish farm. We also, when we have gaps in our farrowing schedule, because farrowing in Maine, especially in the winter, can be really tricky, really difficult, and we've had some problems with that. And so we, in addition to our own breed stock and our own farrowing program, we also buy in feeders mostly from Maine farms, but as I mentioned, we also buy some. We have a really good source in Pennsylvania, so occasionally we go down there and pick up some feeder pigs in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And that's really only because of a lack of sources in Maine. I mean, Maine's not a very piggy state, and so it can be difficult. The supply is always tight in Maine for feeder pigs. So we do supplement our own farrowing with local feeders, and we raise them on our site. They have unimpeded access 24/7 to the outdoors, to the ground, to paddocks and fresh air and sun and all that kind of thing. Even in the winter, we have a winter barn, so that we keep them in woods paddocks during the 7-8 months of the growing season, and then for the four months of the winter season, rather than humping feed and water out to the pigs like we do the rest of the year, we bring the pigs to the feed and the water. And it's really a water thing because in Maine in the winter, the water's going to freeze.
Right.
So in order to have frost-free water, we need to keep it in a barn. So we have winter paddocks that are configured around our winter barn, and the pigs come and go as they please. We feed ad lib, so they've got, constant access to food and water. And we raise them, depending on the precise genetics of the pig, it'll be anywhere from 7 to 9 months to raise them to market weight. We consider market weight, again, depending on the genetics, between 280 and 300 live weight. And we take them to, we've got sort of a collection of local processors that we work with, one state licensed. And I guess there isn't much of a distinction now in our state anyway between state and USDA. There used to be a real distinction. But we work with 3 different processors, and we either do kill only, and so we have our biggest customer is a whole animal butcher shop, and so our biggest wholesale customer. So we deliver weekly a whole carcass to that butcher shop. We bring back either 1 or 2 whole carcasses to our own kitchen to butcher and sell through our market. And then the rest of the product, the rest of the carcasses, we either have cut and wrap and frozen for retail, or we have them cut into primals and again frozen, and then we sell the primals to mostly the restaurant market. And they'll take it frozen. They typically take it frozen when they're buying, loins or bellies or shoulders. They'll typically take it frozen.
Yeah, excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So as far as the inspection process goes, then it's really just your kitchen certification and
right.
health department type stuff that go along with the
right.
kitchen and the finished product. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. And right now we are a licensed commercial kitchen, so that means we can do anything that a restaurant can do. We can make our own sausage, our own pâtés and terrines, and we can make just like a restaurant. I mean, our kitchen is like a restaurant kitchen. It's a full commercial kitchen. And the inspection regime is not onerous in any way. I mean, they come and see us once or twice a year. Our kitchen is brand new, so, it shows pretty well.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's an advantage. And we also don't have, we don't have an eat on-premise or on-premise seating at all. So I think that's another wrinkle that the health authorities, the inspection authorities, pay a lot more attention to restaurants because they have this eat-in issue to deal with. We don't have that because we're not a restaurant. So that also makes things, the inspection side of things, a little lighter for us. The one thing we are considering, we just haven't done it yet, and I think this will be something we'll pursue, is to arrange for on-site inspection for both meat cutting, but also for making charcuterie. So we don't make our own charcuterie. We currently work with co-packers, so we send our pork to the co-packers. There's one in Maine and one in Vermont that we work with, and they do a great job of making salumi and whole muscle charcuterie for us, copa and lanza, and all the various cuts. We would prefer to do that in-house, but it requires an infrastructure investment, and also in order to be USDA inspected, so you can sell it across state lines, sell it online, you need to be set up to have an inspector on your site, at least a couple days a week.
Right. Yeah, and that's where the real expense comes in there. Yeah.
Yeah. That is we haven't crossed that Rubicon yet. We're trying to hone in our protocols, just doing it the way we're doing it and selling more fresh product. I mean, that's really where our market has become a destination butcher shop, and that's really what our business plan is, to be a destination butcher shop. And so we're selling more and more fresh product, not frozen product. And so that's our commitment this year, 2021, is to really develop a reputation for that fresh product in our market. And then we'll see how, whether or not we want to up our game and become inspected.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's actually a good segue into my next question. And I know we're running a little long with you here, so I want to be sensitive to your time. But what do you see as far as short-term goals, the next year or so, and long-term goals, your 5-year plan for your farm and for the services you offer?
Well, the short-term goal is there's sort of two. I mean, there are two sides of the house, right? There's the sort of kitchen market side of the house, and then there's the production side of the house, the actual raising of the animals. We also do seasonal poultry, and we're really focused this year on our breeding program. We really want to up our game. We're undertaking our artificial insemination for the first time. We're buying genetics from breeders in the Midwest, and we're really excited about. We've really, I think, found the right partner for that. So we're really excited to see the outcome of that, the combination of those genetics we're buying in with our current breed stock. So that's going to give us not only more consistency in terms of carcass quality, although that's already really pretty good. The one thing that the AI will help us do is time our farrowing better than we currently do. So we're really looking forward to that, having a more consistent delivery schedule, and that'll enable us to lighten our footprint in the winter, for example. And so that's the goal for 2021, 2022. On the production side is to really raise our breeding program to professional level, because I would say right now it's sort of it's a little bit it could be better. Let's just say that. Yeah. And then on the market kitchen side, what we really want to do. I mean, this is an important part of what we do is give people the experience. We have a food market, and that's great, but our food market is actually on the farm where the food is raised or grown. And although we do sell produce and other products that are raised off farm, of course, but giving people the opportunity to reconnect with how their food is raised and grown, we think is absolutely essential to turning the tide of what's produced in the United States, food that's produced that is literally making people sick, and turning it so that people, so the food we grow or the food people eat is actually a source of health and a source of thriving. And we've seen it ourselves, and we're our own guinea pigs. We've seen the impact of eating real food as opposed to eating processed and industrial raised food. There's a dramatic difference, and we want people to know that. And the best way to deliver that message is for them to actually physically come to our farm and physically even go out and see the piglets, see the chickens and the turkeys and the ducks and the geese that we raise, right there, right on our farm. So that's an important part of the vertical integration. And what we plan to do in 21, 22 is increase that engagement with the public. So, we're going to build some spaces that will allow the public to take what they buy in our market, ready-to-eat stuff. They take in our market and then they take it outside. They could sit at picnic tables or sit on a deck that we're planning to build, so that they can actually have the experience, take it one step further, not just buy our food and see the animals and then take it home and cook it, but they can actually buy ready-to-eat food in our market and then go out to our deck or go out to our picnic area and have a moment on the farm. Yeah. And that, I think that's a real critical factor to engaging with the public and educating them and reconnecting with them, and getting them, helping them understand, what it takes to raise their food.
Wonderful. Excellent. Yeah, I like that. That's some good vision casting there, and definitely some education that the typical consumer needs when it comes to their food sources.
Right.
Well, Dan, one closing question I like to ask everybody, and we'll wrap up here because I know you've got got the day's chores to do. But one question I ask everyone is, what is your favorite part, or what do you most enjoy about raising pigs on pasture?
I love the physical work. That's my favorite. I feel like I could do it all day long, every day. Obviously, there are challenges, and it can be frustrating at times. When you're, I feel, since I didn't grow up on a farm, I always feel like I'm playing catch up. I'm trying to figure out this and that. But farming, the production side of farming is a daily exercise in creative problem solving, and I find that very, very stimulating intellectually. But I love the physical work. I love to be outside. I don't mind being outside when it's pouring rain. I don't mind being outside when it's 5 degrees below zero. I love being outside and working the site, working the animals, fixing fences, feeding them and watering them. I love all of that. The physical labor for me is my favorite part. I used to think that I didn't ever want to work in the market because that sounds boring to me, but it turns out I'm a half-decent salesman with respect to especially pork, but all farm products. And so I now find that on those days when I have to pull a shift in the market, I love that too. I love engaging with the public and helping them choose. In our market, there's an embarrassment of riches, and so, but helping them choose the right cut for the meal they want to make, and introducing them to new cuts or new animal proteins they haven't had before. That I find also very stimulating, very exciting.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. And I look forward to staying in touch with you. We may have to have you come back on some follow-up discussions because there's probably another 2 hours worth of questions that I have here, but we'll table those for another time. But I appreciate you taking the time and coming on the podcast.
Happy to come back anytime, Troy, and thank you for what you do. It's really important. I mentioned to you before that I know that the focus of your podcast is narrow, but that's what makes it great. And it's been the episodes I've listened to have been very informative. So keep doing what you're doing, and we love it.
Wonderful. Well, I pray you have a great day today, Dan. And I guess you're not pulling a store shift, a market shift today, so you probably got to be out in the pasture more today than being behind the counter. Excellent. Well, I pray the weather's well up there, and you have a great week, man. I appreciate talking with you.
All right, thank you. You too, Troy.
All right, take care. Now, see, I told y'all you'd like that one. So, yeah, man, that was good. I keep telling Kelly that we need to find a farm sitter for about 2 or 3 months, and we need to do the Pastured Pig podcast live on tour, on location, and do a lower 48 tour all across the country, stopping and looking at these farms and talking to people on site. It just fascinates me. I know the feedback I get from you guys that you all appreciate the different perspectives, the different setups, and obviously there's only so much that can be conveyed verbally. If we were doing video, then that would be a different story, but I would love to be on these farms with a mic, following somebody around and whipping out the camera as well. That would be great. So one of these days, maybe if your all's benevolence extends to the point where you want to underwrite on Patreon a world tour, then we'll get that done. That's kind of a big ask, isn't it? Hey, everybody, pay for Troy to travel for the next 4 months. You're dreaming, buddy. All right. Well, let's wrap it up here. So I appreciate everyone listening, and man, I love the feedback. Continue to give me feedback. Continue to give me suggestions on A, how I can improve, B, how we can get new topics and new guests, and again, I know I hate to keep saying this. As soon as we get some technology, we're going to be able to improve technology. We're going to be able to do some more broader discussions, maybe even have some roundtable type things if I can get the bandwidth to be able to pull that off, because there's so many things on my grocery list that I want to do and discuss and have you all be exposed to as we get into this more. But that just, that's kind of like the anticipation model. So hopefully you are anticipating that as much as I am, and keep your fingers crossed that the technology light gets shown into the valley of Red Tool House soon. All right. Well, I hope everyone's having a great week. Y'all take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.